Hello everyone. Tonight we're going to talk about rejection. Not in the loud, dramatic, throw your phone across the room kind of way, but in the quiet, aching moments after someone says no and your stomach folds into itself like bad origami. You're lying there, maybe on the cold side of the pillow, replaying a conversation that didn't go your way. It could have been a job, a date, a pitch, a dream. Either way, the door shut, and it didn't even creak. You probably won't survive this, well, not unless you reframe it, unless you do what Marcus Aurelius did every time the universe gave him a hard pass. He didn't crumble, he didn't rage tweet. He wrote, in candlelight, with plague rats in the walls and a crumbling empire outside his window. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now, turn down the lights, turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started on tonight's journey together. You trudge along the path, unsure of your footing. The dust is thick, the wind disapproving, the universe seems to shrug at your efforts. Every door you knock on echoes with emptiness. You want something: recognition, love, an opportunity, and instead, you're handed silence or a polite decline. This is the rejection reflex. It stings because you're wired to see no as failure. Not just a door closing, but a judgment. A verdict. The Stoics saw something else. They saw it as a Marcus Aurelius was emperor of Rome, but he heard no far more often than you might think. The Senate disagreed with him, his generals betrayed him. The gods, if they were still answering prayers, seemed on extended lunch break, but instead of spiraling, he wrote, if you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them. In other words, the sting isn't from the event, it's from your brain's review of the event. You assigned the pain you made no mean something about. Let's zoom in on a moment from 175 CE. Marcus had just quelled a rebellion led by Aurelius Cassius, a trusted general who had declared himself emperor. Imagine, someone you promoted, someone you entrusted with your life, not only says no to your rule but tries to take your crown, most emperor. Historians still debate whether Marcus's choice to pardon the conspirators weakened. That there's an quirky, and yet rejection still hurts. So Marcus recommends a detachment process. You remind yourself, I am not the outcome. I am the effort. This is where you're training. If that sounds clinical, it's and maybe. Marcus knew this, that's a. You start to notice it, and that sting. It fades, here's your, so you change the address. You because Marcus did, and he, you wake up the next morning still tasting rejection on the back of your tongue. It's bitter, like oversteeped tea or a compliment that turns into a job offer for someone else, but this time, you do something different. You stop replaying the scene, you stop asking, why me? And stop whispering, what now? This is where Marcus Aurelius kicks in with a scalpel-sharp reminder. Stop needing a win. Show up anyway. Detachment from outcomes doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're no longer a servant to the result. You shift from applause to action, from results to rhythm. You don't need the universe to validate your efforts with a standing ovation. You just need to keep showing up in the arena. There's a moment in Marcus's meditations that feels like a spiritual slap. Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. You reread it, then you reread it again, and suddenly, that moment when your crush left you on read doesn't feel like a referendum on your worth. It feels like what it was, data, information, not a death sentence, just a Tuesday, in modern terms. This is the Stoic version of post and ghost. You apply. You speak, you dare. Then you move on. Of course, it's not always that clean. You still feel it when people scroll past your hard work like it's digital wallpaper. You still twitch when the boss praises someone who clocked in late, left early, and couldn't spell Excel if it bit them. But now, you train your mind to ignore the scoreboard. You rewire the way you experience effort. You find satisfaction in doing the thing, not winning the prize. Let's take a stroll back to the 2nd century, shall we? It's 170 CE. Marcus has returned to Rome after dealing with the Marcomannic Wars along the Danube frontier. He's exhausted, his armies are thin, the people are restless. And yet, there he is still writing his journal entries, like a guy who's waiting for his DoorDash order of inner peace to arrive. What historians still puzzle over is how he kept going without any promise of success. His campaigns weren't tidy victories. The Roman world was a constant swirl of barbarian tribes, internal politics, and plagues. There was no Hollywood ending. Yet Marcus kept writing things like, "The fruit of this life is a good character and acts for the common good. No medals, just virtue." The quirky fact here, Marcus may have invented the concept of ghosting before Tinder was even a scroll in someone's toga. He appointed several men to high office, only to have them ghost their duties, completely vanish, disappear, leave Rome on read. Some historians believe one governor faked an illness for 5 months, just to avoid a boring assignment in Thrace. So what did Marcus do? He assigned someone else, shrug, moved on. You can too. That podcast you poured your soul into only got 13 views. That doesn't mean stop podcasting. It means maybe don't check the stats every 15 minutes. Maybe detach. Maybe remember why you made the thing in the first place. One of the best parts about Stoicism is that it gives you permission to be relentless without being reckless. You can keep applying, keep speaking, keep offering yourself to the world without needing the world to fall at your feet. Because let's face it, it won't. You're not everyone's flavor. You might be cinnamon in a vanilla world. That's fine. Some people don't even like spice. But your job isn't to change your essence to get applause. Your job is to show up as you. Let the no's fall like autumn leaves, and keep walking. You start to find strange relief in this idea. It's not all on you. Some rejections are because of things outside your control: budget cuts, timing, industry trends, a Mercury retrograde level disaster involving office Wi-Fi. And sure, you'll still have days when you want to scream into a pillow and demand a refund from the universe. But now you whisper instead, "Did I show up well?" That becomes the new scoreboard. Joke break. Here's one. A Stoic walks into a bar. Bartender says, "We're out of what you want." Stoic says, "Perfect, I'll enjoy what's left." It's not a punchline, it's a way of life. Back in Rome, Marcus was often criticized for his compassion. He didn't fit the mold of the ruthless emperor. People wanted a tyrant, they got a philosopher. And yet he ruled longer than almost any other Roman emperor. Not because he demanded loyalty, but because he detached from needing to be loved. That's the wild part. When you let go of needing yes, you make space for better no's, the kind that teach, the kind that sharpen, the kind that leave you standing straighter than before. So you keep walking, one foot in front of the other. Less worried about where you'll end up. More focused on how you're stepping, less obsessed with how loud the applause, more attuned to the rhythm of your own breath, your own effort, your own steady heartbeat against the world's chaos. That's detachment, that's discipline, that's freedom. And just like that, rejection starts to lose its teeth. You don't even flinch this time. The message dings another polite rejection. "Thank you for your interest." It reads like a breakup letter from someone who never actually dated you. You smirk, sigh, and swipe it away. You're building immunity now, like a vaccine made from failure. And this is when the next Stoic rule clicks in: slow your response. You feel the emotional jab, sure, but you don't swing back, not anymore. You pause, you take a long breath through your nose, you act like Marcus sitting in his tent before sunrise, penning his meditations instead of plotting revenge. This, friends, is the art of the pause. It's not glamorous. No one applauds you for not snapping back at your coworker. There's no badge for swallowing your sarcasm. But in that space between stimulus and reaction, you grow. You shift from a reactor to a responder, from an emotional smoke alarm to a fireproof wall. Rejection is often just fuel looking for a flame, and most people, they light the match before they even know what hit them. Let's drift back in time to 185 CE, just after the reign of Marcus, his son, Commodus. Yes, the "I think I'm a god" one from gladiator fame takes the throne. And things go downhill faster than a Roman chariot with bad brakes. Commodus couldn't pause, he couldn't breathe before acting. Historians still debate whether his madness was natural, inherited, or just the result of too many people saying yes to a boy who never learned no. One particularly odd episode, Commodus ordered a new statue built of himself as Hercules, full lion-skin tape, club, and all. He even renamed Rome Colonia Commodiana, because humility clearly wasn't in his library. You can almost hear Marcus whispering from the other side of history, "I raised him better than this." That contrast, that's the point. Rejection doesn't just teach you how to fail gracefully, it teaches you how not to burn down the city when you don't get your way. There's something hilariously modern about this too. You think about the last time you wrote a reply in all caps, stared at it, deleted it, and just type noted. That's a Stoic victory right there. You see, in that pause lies power. Imagine you're sitting at a coffee shop, and the barista misspells your name for the 14th time. You could make a scene, you could demand justice for Brian spelled with an I, but you don't. You smile, sip, move on. The pause has become a habit. Why does it matter? Because a single knee-jerk reaction can undo months of good work. One sloppy clapback can stain your reputation like cheap wine on white linen. In our world of instant everything replies, tweets, judgments, the pause is your shield, and not just any shield. It's like a cloaking device from Star Trek, wrapped in a warm hoodie and the smell of cinnamon tea. And then there's the science, quirky fact. Researchers at the University of Michigan discovered that delaying emotional reactions by even 6 seconds significantly lowers the intensity of the emotion. 6 seconds. That's less time than it takes to microwave a Pop-Tart. So you stop counting in your head. 1, 2, 3. You imagine Marcus again, walking slowly past rows of soldiers, face unreadable. He's pausing, weighing, never saying the first thing that crosses his mind. And you start doing the same. That pulse becomes your moment of clarity in a chaotic world. You also start noticing how often people skip it. Watch people argue on the internet. It's like a tennis match with no net, just lobs of rage, back and forth, no pause, no breath, no reflection. So you log out, you take a walk instead. The trees don't judge you, the wind doesn't argue. You think about how Marcus walked in the gardens of Rome with no phone in his hand, no need to prove himself to strangers. In the comments section, historians still debate whether Marcus was more of a contemplative philosopher or a reluctant emperor. Some say he hated the throne, others believe he embraced it out of duty. What's clear is that he practiced restraint like it was a form of prayer. He didn't react to critics, he responded to principles, and now, you're learning to do the same. Someone mocks your work, you pause. You're passed over for a promotion, you pause. A friend ghosts you after borrowing your air fryer, you pause and then maybe change the Netflix password, but still, you pause first. And the longer you practice this, the easier it becomes. Emotional fluency replaces emotional reactivity. You learn to name your feelings instead of becoming them. Joke break. How many Stoics does it take to change a light bulb? Just one, but only after pausing to ask, is light truly necessary, or merely preferred? The humor lands because it's true. You start re-evaluating every reaction. Was it useful? Was it in line with your values? Was it just a reflex? You realize how many of your old responses were just noise static from a fearful ego trying to sound important. But silence, stillness, those are louder than a scream. So next time the world tells you no, you don't flinch, you breathe. You tilt your head, blink slowly like a cat in the sun, and let the sting roll off like water on marble. You don't race to prove, defend, or attack. You pause, and in that pause, you feel it, strength rising where there used to be panic. Rejection didn't shrink you, it refined you. Now you're starting to get it. You're not just surviving rejection anymore, you're studying it like a Stoic scientist, in a lab coat made of humility and resilience. And today's lesson: empathy, yes, empathy, the thing that feels suspiciously like a warm hug in a cold world. The practice of crawling into someone else's head and realizing that maybe, just maybe, their no isn't even about you. When someone shuts you down, criticizes your ideas, or ghost walks out of your life, your first thought is probably, what's wrong with me? But the Stoics flip that. They teach you to wonder instead, what's going on with them? This is where Marcus Aurelius comes back on the scene, sipping something suspiciously like chamomile, and reminding you, when someone does you wrong, it's because they think it's right. He doesn't mean that they're correct, he means they're operating from their own map of the world. Maybe that rude email came from someone having a bad morning. Maybe that grumpy boss has a sick child at home. Maybe that friend who snapped is dealing with a mountain of invisible weight. Historians still debate whether Marcus's reflections on compassion came from his own chronic illness, or from years of watching the empire groan under civil unrest, but either way, he consistently returned to the same idea: people aren't evil, they're mistaken. And you've made mistakes too, so you stop taking rejection as a personal attack, and start reading it as an emotional signal from someone else's storm. It's not about your worth, it's about their weather. And speaking of weather, imagine you're in ancient Egypt, circa 1350 BCE. The Nile floods have been late for weeks, farmers are tense, crops are wilting. And then a scribe brings word, the harvest will fail. Pharaoh Akhenaten, ever the dramatic one, doesn't yell at the messenger, he pivots orders, a religious pivot to the worship of Aten, the sun disk, hoping to gain celestial favor. His advisors, they think he's losing it. Historians still debate whether he was a visionary or just a royal oddball with a sun obsession. The lesson: even rulers face rejection, even gods go unanswered, and sometimes the most powerful move is not retaliation, it's empathy for the people who simply don't have your vision. Which brings us back to you. You've been practicing the pause. Now you take it further, you fill that pause with perspective. That recruiter who never called back. Maybe they're overwhelmed. That friend who flaked on dinner. Maybe they're spiraling and too ashamed to say so. That critic who left a snarky comment under your video. Maybe they're 13 poured and eating cereal for dinner. Again, suddenly, your anger softens, the tension in your jaw loosens, and your ability to weather rejection transforms. It doesn't sting the same way when you see the human underneath the no. You remember that weird little brain fact from a podcast you have listened to. Humans have mirror neurons, tiny biological spies that help us feel what others feel. That's why you cringe at bad karaoke and tear up during Pixar movies. Your brain is wired for empathy. You just need to practice using it, and practice it you do. You start imagining people's lives before judging their responses. You ask, what pain are they carrying, before assuming they hate me. You start sending kindness into silence and patience into aggression. You become, essentially, the emotional version of bubble wrap, and again, your Stoic coach Marcus is nodding somewhere in your mind. He wrote, if it's endurable, then endure it. If not, stop complaining. But he also wrote, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, today I will meet people who are selfish, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest. It's not a pessimistic warning, it's a realistic expectation. Rejection is part of the package, not a sign the package is broken. Let's rewind to an alt but telling event in Roman history. The trial of Seneca's friend Lucan, a poet, accused of conspiracy. Lucan panics and confesses, falsely implicating others to save himself. Seneca, stoic and sorrowful, says nothing publicly. Historians still argue, was Seneca too passive? Was he quietly empathetic to his friend's fear, or simply bound by his own ethics not to retaliate? Whatever the answer, you learn this, empathy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just not striking back. Sometimes it's just saying, I get it, you were scared. It's like walking into a bakery and learning the last chocolate croissant is gone. The woman who took it. She's got tear stains under her eyes and 3 kids in tow. Do you rage? Or do you nod and wish her well? You nod, you wish her well. Empathy, it turns out, makes rejection lighter. It takes the sharp edges off disappointment and turns them into puzzle pieces. You start to see how people are just trying to figure things out, same as you. Joke break, what do Stoics and therapists have in common? They both ask, and how did that make you feel? Before handing you a mirror, you chuckle. Because that mirror's in your hand now, every time you get rejected, you use it. Not to critique your flaws, but to reflect on the other person's journey. And that empathy, it does something miraculous. It protects your peace. You don't spiral anymore. You don't compose mental monologues of revenge. You smile, you shrug, you get back to your tea, your book, your peace. Rejection, it still happens. But it lands differently, because now, you don't just pause, you see. You see the people behind the no, you see their fears, their pain, their baggage, and instead of absorbing their chaos, you bless them from a distance. Marcus would approve, you've come far. You've learned to pause. You've stared rejection in the face without flinching. You've even offered empathy to people who definitely don't deserve a cookie. Now what? Now you build your fortress, not the kind with moats and archers unless that's your aesthetic. No, we're talking inner fortitude, wisdom, courage, the kind of mental muscle you don't get from motivational posters or almond milk, the kind that Stoics trained for, die in, die out, like emotional athletes with a fondness for sandals. See, here's the thing, rejection is only powerful when it hits an untrained mind. When you haven't done the inner work, one no can feel like an existential hurricane. But when you've cultivated reason and bravery, it's just wind. You close the shutters, light a candle, and carry on. Let's start with courage, the unsung hero of emotional resilience. Not the Hollywood kind where someone dives into a burning building. We're talking about the courage to stay present when someone shuts you down. The bravery to keep creating, applying, loving, speaking after rejection says, don't bother. Think of Hypatia of Alexandria, a mathematician and philosopher in 5th century Egypt, teaching boldly in a world that didn't exactly roll out the red carpet for women in STEM. She kept going, until one day, a political mob saw her intelligence as a threat. It ended tragically, but not before she left behind a legacy of fearless thinking. Historians still debate whether Hypatia was more scientist or mystic, But either way, she exemplifies the Stoic mix of reason and courage. Her life tells you, clarity is a kind of bravery, and that's where wisdom comes in. Wisdom says, you can't control the rejection, but you can control your reaction. Wisdom asks, what am I learning from this no? Is it a misalignment, a timing issue, a chance to pivot? And sometimes, wisdom just says, it's not you, it's entropy. You chuckle because it's true. The universe isn't personal, it's physics. And sometimes that project fails or that date ghosts you simply because chaos. Stoics lived in this reality. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, was sold, beaten, and disregarded for years, but instead of bitterness, he cultivated clarity. His teachings became instruction manuals for resilience. He didn't say, don't feel sad, he said, question your sadness, examine it, don't let it decide who you are. That's your next level. You stop saying, I got rejected, you start saying, interesting. Let's unpack this. It's like receiving a mysterious package. You could panic, or you could open it slowly and see what's inside. Spoiler, it's usually disappointment wrapped in ego. So you unwrap it, you look at the message inside. Maybe the rejection is pointing you towards something better, or teaching you to be less attached, or just reminding you, you're not owed anything, but you're capable of everything. Joke time. Why don't Stoics ever get scammed? Because they never expect anything to begin with. You laugh softly, because expectations are half the battle. When you expect applause, every silence feels like betrayal. But when you expect the world to be what it is, messy, random, deeply human, you start to enjoy the show more. Let's take a detour to Edo period Japan, where a poet named Bashu wandered the countryside, writing haiku about frogs and moonlight. Not exactly a fast track to fame, right? But he didn't care. He believed beauty existed in simplicity. Rejection from literary elites may. He kept writing, because the act of creating was the reward. Historians still argue whether his minimalist poetry was subversive or just soothing, but his resilience whispers to you now, you don't need approval to make something meaningful. So you build your Stoic toolkit, reason, courage, a flashlight of wisdom for dark moments. You find yourself saying strange things in the mirror, like, it's not personal, it's not permanent, it's just perspective. And slowly, rejection loses its bite, because you've got your inner fortress now, walls made of logic, rooms warmed by self-knowledge, and doors that open only to those who knock with kindness. Of course, you'll still feel things. You're not a rock, but you won't be ruled by emotion. You won't chase every ghost or answer every critic. You'll simply return again and again to your Stoic center. Marcus Aurelius would call this your inner citadel, the part of you untouched by fame, failure, or flakiness. The part that stays quiet and steady when the world gets loud. And if someone rolls their eyes at your dream, you'll smile, sip your tea, and whisper, noted. Because you've outgrown the need for universal validation. You don't fear rejection anymore. You expect it, you study it, you bless it for sharpening your clarity. And then you keep going. You've got your citadel now reasoned, fortified, draped in emotional throw pillows. So, what's next? Acceptance. Not the lazy kind where you throw up your hands and say, well, guess I'll just live under a rock now. No, this is active acceptance. The kind Marcus Aurelius practiced every morning while washing his face in water that probably smelled like old bronze coins. The kind where you take stock of what's within your control, and you let go of everything else like expired yogurt. You look at the world not as a place designed to cater to you, but as a spinning, glorious mess you get to dance inside for a while. And in that dance, people will say no, jobs won't call back, plans will fall through. Someone might even ghost you after 5 promising dates and a shared Spotify playlist, and your response, a gentle nod, because you've accepted the fundamental terms and conditions of being alive. Let's talk about Zeno. Yes, that Zeno, the founder of Stoicism. He didn't start out in a toga under the columns of Athens. He was a merchant. And one day, his ship sank, all of it gone. If you ever think your online shop getting 1-star reviews is the worst, imagine watching your entire fortune turn into salt water. But instead of spiraling into despair or attempting to argue with Poseidon, Zeno walked into a bookstore. Yes, really. He wandered into a library and discovered the teachings of Socrates. And just like that, the shipwreck became his rebirth. He later said, "I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered shipwreck." Now that's acceptance with flair. Historians still puzzle over whether his shipwreck was metaphorical or literal, but the impact remains. What seemed like ruin turned into a new philosophy, one that invites you now tonight to release your grip. Here's a quirky truth. There's a bird in Australia, the lyrebird, that can mimic chainsaws and camera shutters. Why? Because it accepts its surroundings and adapts. Rejection, noise, indifference, it just turns them into song. You could do worse than be a little more lyrebird. So when rejection shows up again, and it will, because humans are deeply committed to saying no with flair, you don't need to rage or sulk or text your entire contact list about it. You pause, you breathe, you whisper, "This too is part of the plan." That phrase, "part of the plan," isn't denial, it's clarity. It reminds you that the universe isn't out to get you. It's just being itself. You, meanwhile, get to choose your stance in it. You get to accept what is, instead of fighting for what was never promised. This isn't giving up, it's growing up. You start to realize that most pain comes not from events, but from the refusal to let go. The promotion you didn't get isn't haunting you, your attachment to it is. That failed relationship, it's not the person, it's the fantasy you won't release. And here's where Stoicism gives you a strange kind of power. It reminds you that you already have enough, yes, even now, even with the closed doors and broken plans. Look around. You're breathing, your mind still works. You've got a roof, a playlist, and hopefully a snack nearby, a little joke. What did the Stoic say when his favorite bakery closed down? Our impermanence also, "I'll miss the muffins." You chuckle, because you get it now. Rejection often feels tragic only when you believe permanence is possible. But nothing lasts, not jobs, not feelings. Not even SOURDOUGH. So you stop comparing. Comparison, after all, is just rejection in a fancy hat. Someone else's yes doesn't mean your no is failure. It just means their path and your path diverged. That's all. And maybe you're not walking slower, you're just hiking a harder trail. There's a Latin phrase you'll love, amor fati, love of fate. It means not just accepting what happens, but loving it, finding the poetry in the mess, the lesson in the silence. The humor in being ghosted by someone whose favorite movie was Cars 2. You lean into that love now. You start to see every rejection as redirection. Not a door slamming, but a window opening somewhere, with a better view, maybe one with breeze and fewer insects. Even Seneca the philosopher, who moonlighted as a statesman, said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." And sure, he also got exiled and later forced to take his own life by an emperor with serious control issues. But before that, he wrote thousands of words about how to live freely in the face of fate. Historians debate whether Seneca was hypocritical or heroic. After all, he advised Nero, the human equivalent of a Twitter meltdown. But his wisdom survives because it's true. Peace comes when you stop resisting reality. Tonight, you do just that. You let the rejections float through you. You give up the illusion of control. You stop demanding that life behave, and instead, you behave well within life. You are not a leaf in the wind, you're the wind itself. And if someone tells you, no thanks, you say, all good, because you're playing the long game now. You are not building for applause, you're building for meaning. Acceptance is not the end of ambition, it's the beginning of real freedom. You look out into the dark room around you, fan humming, lights dim, and you think, yeah, this is enough. Because it is, now that you've mastered the art of acceptance. Here's your next tool, humor. Yeah, seriously, that weird smirk you get when things go sideways. It might be the most stoic thing about you. Marcus Aurelius didn't explicitly tell you to laugh at life. But come on, have you read his Meditations? It's basically a self-help journal from 2,000 years ago, filled with phrases like don't be surprised when people act like people. Translation, don't lose your mind when your neighbor revs his chariot at 6 a.m. Humor, in the Stoic sense, isn't about making light of suffering, it's about making room for it, giving yourself just enough space to say, well, that was absurd, instead of spiraling into emotional chaos. Think of it as emotional judo. Instead of blocking the punch, you sidestep and chuckle as it misses you entirely. Take Diogenes. He wasn't technically a Stoic, but the Cynics paved the way. Diogenes once lived in a barrel, a literal wine barrel. He trolled Plato, bopped up politicians, and when Alexander the Great offered him anything he wanted, Diogenes replied, yes, step aside, you're blocking my sun. You think your ex's text messages are awkward? Try roasting the most powerful man on earth with zero pants and zero chill. Historians still debate whether Diogenes was an early performance artist or just really committed to minimalism. But here's the point. When you stop taking yourself so seriously, rejection loses its sting. Suddenly, no becomes a punchline. An inside joke between you and the cosmos. Here's a quirky fact. In 16th century Japan, samurai would sometimes compose short, ironic death poems before going into battle. Picture this: armor clinking, sword drawn, and you're reciting a haiku that goes, the cicadas crying, no sign of the enemy, time to nap. I guess that's humor in the face of finality. That's Stoic swagger. You've got that in you. So when someone slams a door in your face, you don't break down. You grin, maybe even raise an eyebrow. Oh, is this how today's gonna go? Okay then. And suddenly, the world can't touch you. Not because you're numb, but because you're flexible. You're not shattering under pressure, you're bouncing back, armed with a joke and a decent playlist. Imagine this. You're on a date that's going terribly. Your food's cold, your jokes are bombing, and your date just used the phrase crypto pyramid. Old, you might panic, but now you sit back, take a bite of your lukewarm noodles, and think, well, at least this'll make a great story for the group chat. That shift is freedom. It's not about pretending everything's okay. It's about refusing to give your misery a throne. You don't build a monument to your bad day, you build a punchline. Let's wander into a historical moment for a second. During World War II, British citizens endured nightly bombings during the Blitz, but instead of falling apart, they took pride in their ability to keep calm and laugh. One woman was photographed in front of her flattened home, drinking tea like it was just another Tuesday. Did she want her house to be destroyed? Of course not. But when reality offers rubble, some people brew tea and carry on. Humor doesn't erase pain, but it reframes it. That's the magic. You've probably heard the phrase laugh to keep from crying. Stoics would revise it too. Laugh because crying won't fix the plumbing, and let's face it, sometimes life is a leaky faucet. Another joke for your arsenal. Why did the Stoic refuse to react when the waiter spilled soup on him? Because he already accepted it as inevitable. Also, the soup was lukewarm. Fortune favors the slightly disappointed. You chuckle. Not because it's hilarious, but because it's freeing. This lightness, this ability to find a sliver of amusement in even the gloomiest rejections, gives you the upper hand. It tells your nervous system, we're not in danger, we're just uncomfortable, and that's survivable. So the next time you're rejected by a job, a person, a pizza place that closes early, take a breath. Then make the joke. Let it be clever, or dumb, or wildly inappropriate. Whisper just to yourself. It could be as simple as, well, that escalated mediumly. Because you're not just learning to survive rejection, you're learning to dance with it, to spin it around the floor, tip it, and wink at the awkward bystanders. And slowly, your brain rewires. The trigger becomes less terrifying. Laughing at your own rejections gives other people permission to do the same. It's Stoicism on a social level. Remember this, even Marcus Aurelius probably got friend-zoned. And what did he do? Kind of on brand for my life. Then carry on, you're not broken, you're hilarious. And that might just be the most stoic move of all. You've laughed, you've smirked your way through rejection. Boundaries are stoic armor. Not the flashy, gold-plated kind that makes you look like a lost extra from Gladiator, but the invisible kind that says, this far, no further. Marcus Aurelius may not have had to deal with spam texts or clingy coworkers, but he did say, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do only what you do. Here's the twists. Setting boundaries isn't about building walls. It's about being the mountain, unmoving, steady, still there, even after the storm has screamed itself hoarse. Imagine you're a lighthouse, the waves crash, the wind howls, the seagulls poop with no remorse. But you shine, you're not yelling at the storm to stop. You're just refusing to sink. Here's a weird historical gem. In ancient Mesopotamia, property lines were marked by boundary stones called kaduru. These weren't just rocks, they were engraved with curses, like full-on, may the gods turn your fields into salt flats if you trespass kind of vibes. Overkill, may be effective. Absolutely, you don't need a kaduru. You need clarity, and the courage to repeat yourself calmly when someone pretends they didn't hear the first time. Say it with me. That doesn't work for me. Again, no thank you. And now with feeling, I'm not available for that kind of conversation. The trick is to be firm without being furious. It's not about turning into a human flamethrower. It's about staying centered while everyone else is melting down. Open-ended academic argument time. Some scholars argue that the Stoic ideal of apatheia, freedom from emotional disturbance, creates emotional detachment that's socially dangerous. Others say it creates the space to engage more ethically. Maybe it depends on whether you're using your boundary as a prison or as a platform. You get to decide what gets your energy, and yes, that includes Uncle Frank's conspiracy theories at dinner and your boss's passive-aggressive just checking in emails at 11:37 p.m. Rejection doesn't always wear the mask of a no. Sometimes it's people rejecting your time, your peace, your sanity. That's when you don't need acceptance, you need a line in the sand. Quirky fact time. In medieval Iceland, you block them. You don't need a soul, just Wi-Fi and boundaries. Now picture this. You're walking through a crowded airport. People are rushing. Babies are crying. That key is revoked quietly, permanently, and without apology. You are not obligated to attend every argument you're invited to. You are not a party planner for other people's emotional fireworks. You are a custodian of your own peace. Remember the callback, that date with the crypto pyramid guy. Imagine he keeps texting memes, late night hey s, Unsolicited shirtless photos. Humor got you through the date. Now you set the boundary. Thanks, but I'm not interested. Then you mute, delete, or if you're feeling extra stoic, wish him well, and forget he ever existed. Boundaries are daily practice. They're not dramatic gestures, they're subtle rituals. You don't slam the door. You close it gently and lock it with grace. This also means setting boundaries with yourself. That inner voice that keeps replaying rejections like a broken VHS tape. Yeah, it needs a line too. Tell it. We're not doing that today. Your time is limited. Your focus is precious. You don't waste it rehashing conversations that already ended, relationships that already expired, or dreams that no longer serve you. Historical example. The Roman Emperor Hadrian once redrew the borders of the empire, literally built a wall in Britain and said, "Nope, this is enough." Was it controversial? Of course. Did it make a clear statement? You bet. Be like Hadrian. Build your metaphorical wall. It doesn't make you mean, it makes you deliberate. So the next time someone tests your boundary, don't flinch. Smile, nod, repeat your truth, because you don't need permission to protect your peace. You don't need consensus to claim your space. And when the winds howl, you don't need to scream back. You just stand tall, rooted in your own truth. You are the mountain, they are the wind, let them howl. You're standing at the edge of something big now. Rejection has come and gone. You've laughed at it, reflected on it, drawn boundaries around it like chalk outlines at a crime scene. So, what's next? Forgiveness. Yes, that soft, squishy, misunderstood Stoic superpower. Let's just say it up front. Forgiveness isn't about being nice. It's not about letting someone off the hook or inviting them back to wreck the living room of your soul. It's about you, clearing out the psychic clutter, deleting the old voicemails your brain keeps replaying, creating the stillness you need to focus on what really matters. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly. When another blames you or hates you, go to his soul, penetrate inside, and see what sort of person he is. You are not excusing bad behavior, you are understanding it, and then letting it float away like a balloon you forgot to tie down. Historical detour. Let's visit the Battle of Philippi, 40 BCE. Brutus and Cassius, once friends and allies of Julius Caesar, found themselves fighting against the man they helped assassinate. When they lost, you'd expect a bloodbath, right? But instead of a purge, Mark Antony reportedly forgave several of Caesar's enemies. Why? Political chess. Sure, but also, power is magnified when it's used to restrain revenge. Now, no one's asking you to forgive your office nemesis in a dramatic Shakespearean soliloquy. But the same rule applies. You don't forgive because they earned it. You forgive because you deserve the space it frees up inside you. Here's something strange and true. In ancient China, during the Zhou dynasty, criminals could be given symbolic punishments like tattoos or facial branding. Brutal, yes, but it was believed that once the punishment was served, the debt was paid, no lingering grudge, the slate was wiped. Rejection can feel like punishment, but holding on to resentment. That's a sentence with no parole. You've heard the phrase, "Don't drink poison hoping someone else will die." Replaying that bad date, that missed promotion, that old friend who ghosted you. That's just poison with garnish. Now let's stretch this a little. Some historians argue that Stoicism doesn't really advocate forgiveness, it promotes indifference. But others see deeper waters, a forgiveness rooted not in warmth, but in clarity. You see things for what they are, not worse than they are. That person, they acted from pain, confusion, ego, fear. Just like you have, once or twice. Quirky fact time. There's a documented psychological effect called the false consensus bias, where we assume others think like us. So when someone rejects us, It feels like betrayal, but in truth, their thought process is probably as different from yours as a penguin's commute is from a pigeon's. Sir, next time someone wrongs you, imagine this: they're a bird of a different feather. Maybe they're flapping in circles. Maybe they're just molting. Either way, you're not responsible for their flight pattern. And this doesn't mean you welcome everyone back into your life. You're not running an emotional Airbnb. It means you stop arguing with reality. Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been different. It's not resignation, it's release. You already know what happens when you don't forgive. Resentment turns into a roommate. One that eats your snacks, rewatches your rejections at 3 a.m., and leaves passive-aggressive notes on your mental fridge. Forgiveness evicts that energy, kindly, quietly, permanently. Imagine yourself holding a box. Inside is the rejection, the insult, the disappointment. It's heavy. You've been carrying it for a while, haven't you? You set it down. You don't even open it. You just walk away. Freedom doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it comes with a deep breath and a shrug. Now, remember the callback to the coworker who called your idea cute in that meeting? You've practiced humor, drawn the line, and now here comes the grace. You don't have to like them, but you stop letting their words echo. They can be wrong, you can still win. This isn't just for them, it's for you. You forgive the ones who misunderstood you. You forgive the system that overlooked you. You even forgive your past self, who didn't yet know what you now do. Another Roman tidbit: the Emperor Antoninus Pius, often overshadowed by his successor Marcus Aurelius, was known for his calm rule and mild temper. He reportedly pardoned more political enemies than he punished. Some saw it as weakness, others saw it as the reason the empire stayed peaceful for so long. Strength, in Stoicism, doesn't roar, it whispers, it lets go. And here's where it gets even more personal: forgive yourself for the text you wish you didn't send, for the years you think you wasted, for the mask you wore too long. The Stoics weren't perfect. Neither are you. You're not supposed to be. You're supposed to try again and again and again. Because you don't lose power when you forgive. You reclaim it. Rejection may have stung, but forgiveness is how you decide what kind of person you'll be afterward. A person who carries scars, but not grudges. A person who can walk away smiling, and not just because it makes you the bigger person, but because it makes you lighter. Now you're at the last bend of this long, winding road. You've learned to laugh at rejection, reflect on it, set firm boundaries, and even forgive the culprits who handed it to you. But there's one final rule, the ultimate Stoic superpower: changing your perspective. Imagine you're holding a kaleidoscope. You turn it ever so slightly, and the scattered shards rearrange into new, beautiful patterns. That's what changing your perspective does with rejection. It doesn't erase the no, it transforms it. Marcus Aurelius, that wise emperor with the grandest beard in history, said, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." The rejection you're staring at, it's not an immutable truth etched in stone. It's a lens, sometimes foggy, sometimes crystal clear. Now, perspective shifts aren't always fun. They sometimes require you to lean into discomfort, like drinking a warm kombucha when you really wanted iced coffee. But that's growth. That's turning a no into a seed. A neat historical nugget: during the Renaissance, when Galileo's telescopic discoveries challenged the geocentric worldview, he was rejected by many peers and church authorities. Yet, by changing perspective, looking beyond the earth-centered model, he paved the way for modern science. Rejection wasn't the end, it was a pivot. Changing your viewpoint means embracing impermanence. Everything, wealth, fame, relationships, comes and goes like the tide. You might clutch at these things as if they were lifeboats, but Stoicism teaches they're more like driftwood, helpful to float on, but never permanent foundations. Here's a quirky fact. Some scientists believe octopuses can change the texture and color of their skin in milliseconds to blend into any environment. They don't resist change, they embody it. You, dear viewer, have the same capacity to adapt your mental camouflage. Remember, historians still debate whether Stoicism's call to control one's perceptions leans toward empowering liberation or cold detachment. Is it about freedom or emotional armor? Maybe both, maybe neither. It's up to you to decide. You start by asking, what does this rejection really mean? Is it a door closing or a window opening? Is it a signpost pointing you toward something better, or just a misplaced brick on your path? Sometimes, changing perspective means recognizing the absurdity. You ever notice how some rejections feel like being told you're the wrong fit for a potato sack race when you actually signed up for the egg and spoon contest? Life is weird like that. You don't have to love every no, but you can invite curiosity instead of dread. Another personal touch. When you feel rejection tightening like a noose, imagine the vastness of the night sky. Your worries are just tiny stars flickering briefly in an endless cosmos. Perspective is cosmic humility, knowing your troubles are part of a grand, unknowable dance, and finally, you learn to ride the wave of rejection rather than being crushed by it. You surf with grace, style, and maybe a little splash of "I've got this." You've mastered the art of turning every no into a power move. You wield rejection like a finely tuned instrument, playing melodies of resilience, wisdom, and calm. So here's to you, the Stoic voyager, walking through life's no thank yous with a smirk and a steady heart. Because in the end, it's not about avoiding rejection. It's about mastering how you meet it. And that, my friend, is the greatest power of all. You might be wondering why I'm still talking after 10 parts when you asked for 10 sections. Consider this a bonus track, an encore for the Stoic soul. It's time to wind down, to let your mind soften like warm butter melting on fresh toast. The journey through rejection is complete, but the reflection is just beginning. Breathe in, feel the air fill your lungs slowly, deliberately. Each breath is an anchor, tethering you to the present moment, the here and now. The noise of the world fades, replaced by the quiet rhythm of your own heartbeat. This moment is yours. Think back on the lessons, how rejection is not a verdict, but a visitor, how you learn to pause, to reflect, to draw lines that no one crosses, how humor softened the edges, unforgiveness lightened your load. Each step a stone laid carefully on the path to inner peace. There's a soft glow in realizing that rejection is not personal. It's an event, a momentary cloud passing across the vast sky of your life. Remember the story of Emperor Hadrian, who faced exile and scorn, but chose to channel his energy into building both literal walls and a legacy of calm. The ancient Romans knew a thing or two about turning setbacks into stepping stones. Historians still debate whether Hadrian's Stoicism was genuine or a mask for political savvy. Maybe it was both, and maybe that's enough. You don't have to have all the answers, only the courage to keep moving. Here's a little fact to ponder. Some cultures practice forest bathing, immersing themselves in nature to reduce stress and increase mindfulness. Let that idea settle in. Your mind is a forest. Let it breathe. Let the leaves rustle with calm thoughts and the wind carry away what no longer serves you. As you prepare to rest, imagine a gentle wave rolling onto the shore, retreating slowly. Your worries dissolve with the tide. Your heart beats steady, like a drum in a slow, peaceful rhythm. You have practiced resilience tonight. You have faced rejection with the quiet strength of a mountain, unmoved by passing storms. Let the words of Epictetus echo softly in your mind. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Now, as the light dims and the fan hums softly, let your thoughts drift like dandelion seeds on the breeze. You are ready to rest, ready to dream, ready to rise again. Good night, dear traveler.